Opinion Modi's G7 Playbook advancing India's interests amid complex global geopolitics. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi concluded what has become an annual occurrence since 2019, his participation at the G7 summit. In the backdrop of domestic criticism of his foreign policy, Modi concluded what was a very successful G7 visit, no less than in Canada. India and Canada reconciled after an intense period of diplomatic fallout. Newly elected Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney welcomed Modi with open arms, and both leaders agreed to reinstate their high commissions and work towards the betterment of the people and the planet. Modi also conducted several bilaterals and one-on-ones with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, with whom he was spotted sharing a light moment and then an important discussion on India-Italy relations and addressing issues that plague the people of both countries. French President Emmanuel Macron, with whom he was also captured sharing what looked like an incredibly funny moment and discussing the important subjects that will take India-French relations to newer heights. President of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, whom he congratulated for being the first female Mexican president in over 2 centuries, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, who must have been happy that Donald Trump was no longer in Canada, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. These and others were on the list of people that Modi met and interacted with during the summit. It was looking rather bleak leading up to the G7 meeting. For a long time, it was a situation of will they, won't they send the invite, due to the diplomatic strain that had caused undue damage to relations under the Justin Trudeau administration. The fallout had started when former Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau, in a bid to keep control of his government and save his prime ministership, had supported radical and separatist groups working against India. But his failure to keep the rest of the Canadians happy, who had been hoping for affordable housing and jobs, got him voted out. A bitter rivalry with India, its citizens, and the Indian government only added to his earlier-than-planned political demise. It soon changed as the other participating nations unanimously requested India's presence at this summit of the world's elite countries. As such, Canada adhered, and India was invited. In India, criticisms surrounding Modi's foreign policy once again started to gain pace when U.S. President Donald Trump ambiguously left the grouping in Connecticut and returned to Washington. Asim Munir, Pakistan's puppet master and military dictator, had reached the U.S. Capitol. Speaking to reporters after their meeting, President Trump stated that he believed Pakistan, with its deeper understanding of Iran, could play a key role in de-escalating the situation with Israel. Trump once again spoke on the recent India-Pakistan face-off, saying both countries were going at it and crediting his outreach with defusing the crisis. Before leaving for Croatia, Modi also took a call with Trump, who suggested a visit to Washington. It was promptly declined due to Modi's pre-scheduled visit, and Munir's presence in Washington would have been inconceivable to the Indian Prime Minister and the people of India, especially if Trump had resorted to his underhanded tactics of using the Oval Office as the world's theater and attempted to force another mediation. Clearly, Modi was right to trust any such instincts. During the call, Modi also made sure to harden India's stance on terrorism and the anti-terror Operation Sindoor and cleared the air on Trump's participation in the ceasefire with Pakistan. He clarified that no topics related to trade were discussed in connection with Operation Sindoor. He also reiterated that India has never accepted third-party mediation and will not accept such mediation in the future. Furthermore, he emphasized that India will now treat acts of terrorism not as proxy actions but as acts of war. After declining Trump's invitation, Modi invited the US President to India for the Quad Summit, which will be held in New Delhi later this year. The invitation was accepted. While the specific G7 nations were preoccupied with their tangled webs of sanctions, conflicts, and internal politics, Modi seized the agenda and, once again, fist on the table, took the issues of the global south to the world's elite. His intervention was not a polite request but a powerful declaration that the era of the global south being a passive spectator is over. India considers it a fundamental responsibility to champion the concerns of nations long sidelined in the corridors of power. Modi framed the global south's plight not as a plea for help, but as something that Canada, Germany, France, and all the others in this grouping require for global stability. In no uncertain terms were the global leaders reminded that it is the developing world that suffers first and worst from the geopolitical games played by the elite powers. Crises in food, fuel, and finance always hit them the hardest. Modi's declaration, "No one in the global south should be left behind," was him making it clear that the G7's vision of world order is dangerously incomplete without the active and equitable participation of the world's majority, a majority that India is now unapologetically leading. Another subject that Modi cut through was the West's high-minded, often hollow discourse on artificial intelligence. Modi delivered a much-needed reality check, pointing out the inconvenient truth that AI itself is an energy-intensive technology. As such, the majority of the global South countries stand the chance of being left behind. PM Modi's message was as simple as it could get: a tech-driven society can only be sustainable through renewable energy. And for the detractors, this isn't just theory. Modi has backed it up domestically and internationally with pioneering initiatives like the International Solar Alliance and the Global Biofuels Alliance as functioning global platforms. More pointedly, India had met its Paris climate goals well ahead of schedule, and as of March 31, 2025, renewable energy accounted for 46.3% of the total installed capacity. India is also one of the major proponent nations of AI, and as a response to it, India's AI talent pool has grown faster than any other country, expanding by 252. Needs create demand, demand creates jobs, and jobs create specific talent pools. Modi also did not shy away from confronting the gravest threats of our age. Without mincing words, he singled out the menace of deep fake technology as a great concern and proposed a solution: mandatory watermarking or a clear declaration on all AI-generated content. It was a call for a global tech governance regime built on accountability, a stark contrast to the move fast and break the market ethos, which most tech companies can be accused of, that has unleashed so much digital chaos upon the world. When the conversation turned to terrorism, his tone hardened further. After thanking the leaders for condemning the ghastly Pahalgam attack, he used the moment to call out the West's crippling hypocrisy. Swipe left for next video. His statement that there can be no place for double standards on terrorism was a direct shot at the selective outrage that has long plagued global counter-terror efforts. He laid bare the absurdity of a system where sanctions are deployed at will for political reasons, while, in his words, countries that openly support terrorism are rewarded. He drew a clear red line, warning that any nation providing sanctuary or support to terrorists would be forced to pay the price. It was not a request but a promise and a signal that under Modi, India would no longer tolerate the duplicity that has cost it so dearly. To have the Pakistani military dictator in Washington at the time, with Trump in the US to meet him, even if it was seemingly for the Iran-Israel conflict, in which Pakistan supports Iran, the message on duplicity could not have been delivered at a better time. Latest blogs.